Okay, so good morning and welcome to our second field trip. We are at the Cindale Farms Dairy. This is Meg Austin. Her family has owned and operated this dairy for quite some time, and she and her husband now run the actual dairy, and their family also owns Southern Craft Creamery. So you guys, many of you have eaten the ice cream and other goodies that they sell there. But I thought you might like to know a little bit more about the actual dairy operation and where everything comes from. So let's get started.
All right, good morning, y'all. And I do apologize. Y'all are going to hear a lot of background noise today, so I'll try to speak loudly so you all can hear me. This is Cindale Farms. So we are a working dairy farm. My family began this dairy, I think it's 26 years ago now. So my dad's been in the dairy business pretty much his entire life, and I grew up in this business as well. Kind of going to tell you guys a little bit about the dairy industry first, and then we'll talk about dairy cow breeds and kind of the life cycle of a dairy cow. And then we'll go down into the parlor where you guys will get to see us actually milking the cows. And then we'll venture over to the feed barn and talk about how we feed our cows and what they eat and kind of how their stomachs work. So a little bit about the dairy industry as a whole. In the state of Florida, if you guys didn't know, agriculture represents the second largest industry in the state. And dairy makes up a large portion of that. The first largest industry is tourism. Hopefully, right now we're kind of going through a slump in both of those industries due to coronavirus, but hopefully those will both return after this all passes. But there is a large agriculture industry in the state, and dairy is a large segment of that. We have roughly 120,000 dairy cows in the state, and they are on about just over 70 dairy farms. So the average dairy size in our state is very large, averaging about 15 to 1,600 cows per farm. We, on our farm, are a good bit smaller than that. Our total number is right around 500, from baby calves all the way up to adult-aged milking cows. And we milk generally around 250 to 280, sometimes peaking up to 300. So these are our girls. And kind of just for a state average, for production reasons, and we'll talk about that a little bit more when we're actually down in the milking parlor, the average cow in Florida can produce anywhere from 6 to roughly 9 gallons of milk per day per cow. So you guys will get to see that a lot closer in a minute. On our farm, and in most farms, cows are milked 2 to 3 times a day. Here on our farm, we milk generally twice a day. We're on kind of a weird schedule that we just started in January, and we actually kind of alternate every other day. We'll milk twice a day today at 12-hour intervals, and then tomorrow we'll milk in the middle of the day at an 18-hour interval from this milking. And then on Sunday we'll milk twice a day again. So we're kind of a bit unique. We actually adopted that practice kind of following some New Zealand farmers, and we did that for labor reasons here at our farm. Back to the cows themselves. As you guys can see, our cows come in all shapes and sizes. We like to refer to them as our mutts. But the two most popular dairy breeds, and there's 6 main dairy breeds that are recognized, but the 2 most popular are actually standing right beside each other. The gorilla, that's the black and white, I always refer to them as the Chick-fil-A cows because most kids and adults see them on TV on the Chick-fil-A ads. That's the most popular breed, and that's a Holstein. She technically is a crossbreed, but she's looks very much like a Holstein. Holsteins can actually get a little bit taller than her. They're a very, very large cow, and they produce very large quantities of milk. The other most popular breed is the little brown one. So there's one right next to her, and she is very, very small. She's the smallest cow in our herd, so it's funny that they're next to each other. That's a Jersey. So there's a few along the line. There's 2 more down here, and then a few scattered in up at the front. Those are called Jersey cows. Like I said, they're the second most popular breed. They don't produce as much volume of milk. They're not as big as a Holstein, but they do produce very high levels of butter, fat, and protein, which are really great for making products like ice cream or cheese or butter. When my husband and I came back to the farm, which was roughly 10 years ago, my dad had a lot of the Holsteins, and we had just a few of the Jerseys. But my husband and I decided to switch to more of a Jersey-based herd. because of the reasons for higher butter fat, and also because they do a little better in a hotter environment when we're asking them to go out and graze. And so we'll talk about how we graze our cows and how we feed our cows, and so we prefer that type of cow to the bigger Holsteins. Now the girls that are kind of the mixed match colors are actually crossbreeds of the two. So the girls that are almost just solid black, there's one up there that's kind of mainly black with some white spots, and then the darker brown colored ones, like the second girl at the front and the sixth girl down, those are crossbreeds of the Holsteins and the Jerseys. So when we came back, when we wanted to switch to Jersey genetics, we did purchase a few Jerseys, but then we also started just breeding to Jersey bulls, producing these crossbreeds. They're pretty nifty animals too, but they come out in all sorts of different colors. So next we'll go down into the actual milking parlor. I think some of you that were logged on early saw how this parlor system works for the exit lane. When these 12 cows come in, they file in kind of just one after another in line, and the first cow will open the gate for her neighbor, and those are just swivel gates, and she opens it just with her body. Then the second cow does the same for her neighbor all the way down the line. So they stay in this little section here, and there's 12 cows on this side and 12 cows on the other side, so we can milk 24 at a time. They stay here until all 12 are finished milking, and the total milking process takes roughly 10 to 15 minutes for a side of 12. Once they're all done, Mr. Lester, who you guys will meet down in the parlor, there's some buttons in there, he'll hit exit, and then this whole side lifts up and allows all 12 to walk out, and they are free to go back to either the feed barn or out to pasture. You guys ready? I think we can go on down in and we can look a little closer. We've got to maneuver through some cows, so you guys will get to see them up close and personal. We'll go this way. All right, girls. Once you go through, just be careful walking down. Sometimes it gets a little bit slippery.
Good morning.
This is Lester. Lester is our day shift milker, and then he helps us with other things around the farm as well. So right now he's finishing up, I think this side is almost done. And these girls have just come in and they are actually hanging being milked. I'm gonna take this out. For demonstration's sake, I'm going to remove this one, and we're going to talk about kind of the whole process. So as you guys can see, this part of the barn is lower than the surrounding. So we call this the pit of the parlor, and the reason for that is it allows the cow's udders to be at our level, and you don't have to stoop down and hang the milking machines up. You guys can see they're kind of nice right here where we can reach. A little bit about cattle in general and kind of their anatomy. This is their udder. There are 4 compartments to their udder, and each compartment has a teat. So this is where the milk actually comes from, and we call them quarters. 4 quarters on a cow. So they have a teat here and then a little opening at the end. So when the cows first come in, we don't just hook up the machine. There's actually a process to it. We want to, 1, produce really high quality milk, and 2, we want to do as good of a job as we can protecting the udder itself in the cow from any cases of mastitis. So mastitis is an infection in the mammary gland. So we want to try to do all we can to prevent that. So the first thing we do when the cows first come in is we use this. This is a dip cup. You just squeeze the cup and it'll fill in the top. This is a bleach based pre-dip. So we'll simply put it on each teat end, and you want to let that sit for at least 30 seconds. That's going to help kill any bacteria or pathogens that might be on those teat ends. The other thing that we will do even prior to that, if she's really dirty, if she's been laying some mud or some manure, we'll go and just kind of dry wipe off any of that before we even dip. Now, once the dip is on, we're going to take a little sample of milk from each cheetah, making sure it's nice, white, normal looking. If there's any abnormalities, we will mark her with a big orange crayon on her leg and then also on her udder, and we'll write her on our dry erase board at the front of the barn. And that will signify that she doesn't get milked until the end, and we can examine her more closely. So the guys will pull her to the side and we'll look at her last. After it's been on for 30 minutes, or for 30 seconds, we'll wipe each cheetah, clean it off, and then we're ready to hang the actual milking unit. So this milking unit, this metal outside canister is actually where the milking takes place. There's a rubber liner on the inside, and that's where the actual meat goes in. And then these are air lines. So there is air applied between this rubber, it's called an inflation, and this outside canister. And it functions in kind of a high-low pressure, just like that of a calf nursing. So that's what will actually allow the milk to flow from the udder. I'm gonna turn it up real quick. So hook each up, and as you can see right away, milk will start flowing. Now, one thing that we always need to do is ensure that the cows are comfortable and things are quiet. And when I say quiet, obviously there's the noises of the parlor, but there's no yelling, there's nobody running around. Cows are very, they like a consistency every day, and they like the same routine. And part of all of this is very comforting to them. So even before they come into the parlor, back there where they're standing is called the holding pen. And that's just where they wait until they're ready to come in. And even back there, you guys can see them chewing. We'll talk about that in just a second. They're very comfortable, they're very relaxed, and then they're ready to come in to be milked. And all of that allows for them to have adequate milk letdown. So there's a hormone, both in us and in cattle, that naturally occurs called oxytocin. And oxytocin, we kind of call it a feel-good hormone. It's what allows for you to have kind of this nice comforting feeling, but then also allowing for milk flow to come very quickly. So we want that to happen as soon as they come in, so that milk can come out quickly, and she can come in and get done fast and then go right back to the barn. Let's see, kind of the flow of milk. So it's going to collect here just for a second in the actual milking unit, flow down these tubes to a stainless steel pipe at the bottom of the barn. Woo! This is a dirty job, guys. There is a little tray here called a poo catch tray, but some of them don't like to use it. So Lester will come and spray that down once he gets done with that one down there. But the milk will flow then into this receiver jar. So it holds roughly 10 gallons. There's a sensor within that, and you guys can hear this very noisy pump kick on every now and then. And that will send the milk up through this part right here. There's that pump. So it's pumping the milk out of the receiver jar, up through a filter, through this pipe, up over our heads, and then we can look into a room where we have a large storage tank where their milk is held. And it's held there and cooled until we either use it for the creamery, or a big milk truck comes and picks up whatever we don't use for the creamery, and then takes it to places like Publix, Walmart, Winn-Dixie, any of those big processors that then process the milk further for you guys to buy at the store. So we talked about, let's review. The girls come in, we do 12 on each side. So in this parlor, kind of the name of this type of parlor, there's lots of different types. This is a double 12 parallel rapid exit. A bunch of words meaning we can milk 12 on a side. They stand parallel to each other. Instead of herringbone, which is where they come in and they stand kind of side by side and you milk but from the side instead of from behind. And then rapid exit, meaning they all leave at once, which some of you saw at the beginning. So they come in, we do a pre-dip. We check and make sure the milk is of good quality. We hang the milking unit. After the cow gets done milking, which all of these girls except for 2 are finished, there is a sensor within the line that recognizes when her milk flow has slowed, and it will automatically turn the vacuum off of the milking unit and pull the machine off. done purely for efficiency, so whoever's milking can focus on the other set of cows while these girls are finishing. But once they're finished, you guys see that one at the end just popped off, and she will very, very soon. Once they're finished, then Lester will come back with a post-dip. He's actually got it right down here. It's in the same sort of dip cup, but it's an iodine-based dip. So it's got the iodine in there to help protect the teat end from bacteria pathogens, but it's also got some emollients and conditioners to make sure that her teat ends don't get dry or chapped. I said she's going to be done soon, but she's slowing. And then once they get dipped, post-dips, then they're free to go back to the barn or out to the field. Let's see, what else am I missing? I did not talk about, and I meant to outside, I did not talk about kind of the life cycle of a cow. So you guys should all know this. Y'all are middle schoolers. In order for a cow to produce milk, and I know you can't answer me right now, but think about it, what has to happen first? Is a cow just born and she can just like automatically produce milk? Or does something in her life have to occur? So they are mammals, just like us. So in order for a cow to produce milk, she has to have a calf first. So, well, this one should finish it. There she goes. So it is pull off, and you guys can see a difference from when she started to when she's finished. So she's nicely milked out now, and here I'll do a face blister. Then I just fully coat each teat in with the post dip, and then she won't come back until later tonight for her next milking. So a cow has to have a baby before she can produce milk. So dairy cows reach puberty at roughly a year of age. So we aim to breed them for the first time at roughly 14 to 15 months of age. Then that will set them up to have their first calf at roughly 2 years of age. So prior to any of this, and we raise all of our calves here on our farm, and we're a seasonal calving, so I shouldn't say we don't have any. We have 2 right now, but we generally don't have any this time of the year. We only have them in the fall for the most part that we keep and raise ourselves. But so they'll be raised here on our farm. They'll grow up with their herd mates up until 2 years of age, and then at that time they come into the milking herd, which is here. And then each year, roughly, it doesn't always happen perfectly, but each year we aim for a cow to have another calf. So every year she's going to have a baby. 2 months prior to her having a calf, she's going to be dried off, meaning we stop milking her and she gets turned into our dry cow field. So we've got about a 100-acre pasture in the back, and she goes on vacation for 2 months. So roughly every year she's going to be in milk for 10 months and then on vacation for 2 months, have a calf, and then rejoin the milking herd. So that's kind of a brief example of the cow's kind of lactational cycle. Thinking if I missed anything. I think we're about ready to move on. Do you think of anything I missed?
I think you got it.
Okay. I've talked about buttons and stuff. This is just kind of how the parlor works. This panel controls the exit gate and the gates when the girls come in, and then these buttons control the actual milking machines. So just kind of a quick look at the fun buttons in the parlor. Okay, so let's head out and we'll go over to the feed barn. Oh, while we're standing here, we have a really good shot. You guys see her, what she's doing? Both of them, a lot of them, when we looked back here earlier, I think every cow we looked at was doing it. So she's not chewing on bubble gum, she's chewing her cud. So I'll kind of start talking about cows and their anatomy of their stomachs here, and then we'll talk more when we get up to the feed barn. So cows are unique in that they're ruminants. They have a 4-compartment stomach, and each of those compartments do different things in order to break down feed that people or animals like us with a single stomach cannot eat. So they eat lots of hay, they eat lots of grasses, they eat lots of recycled or upcycled products, which I'll talk about over at the feed barn. And their stomachs are amazing in that they can take those nutrients and turn it into marvelous things like milk and meat for us. And so they're taking a low-end nutrient and turning it into a very high-end nutritious product for us to consume. So the ruminants and the cows have 4 compartments. The first compartment called the rumen, and it's really, really big. It's about the size of a 55-gallon drum. So about 55 gallons fits in there. So when cows are eating or grazing, they eat very, very fast. And they don't really chew their food when they eat it. They just snip it off with their tongues and swallow. Then when they're comfortable, waiting to be milked, being milked, or maybe laying down out in the field, that material that wasn't really chewed well gets burped back up and gets chewed again. And you guys can actually see it. There's a little, it looks like she has a little chew of tobacco on the side of her mouth right there. And that's the wad of cud, and it's about the size of kind of baseball, maybe between a baseball and a softball. And she'll burp that back up from her rumen, and she'll stand and chew it over and over again until it's a particle size that can be swallowed and passed along to her other compartments of her stomach to be broken down better. Pretty cool, huh? I know some of you probably thought it was kind of gross, but I think it's cool. All right, we'll head on over to the feed barn. Come on in, girls. Come on, girls.
Now I noticed some of your cows have green bands.
Yes, so good question.
They get bracelets?
Yes, some of our cows do have bracelets. So you guys can see this one right here has a green band. We have green bands, yellow bands, and orange bands. Only, and you guys can, there's two great examples right there. There's a yellow band on that one and a green band on this one. So those bands signify a blind quarter. So for instance, this little girl, her right front, you guys can see that teat is very, very small. She does not milk out of that quarter. But the other three are perfectly fine, and they can be milked out of. So the reason for blind quarters are many. They can be born when they don't lactate out of a quarter, which is rare. They can have had an injury to one of their teat ends or the quarter itself. Or they could have had a really bad case of mastitis, the infection that I talked about in the actual mammary gland. And maybe we could not get it treated with antibiotics. And so we just blinded it off, meaning we no longer milk it. So the other three compartments, none of them are interrelated. So even if one quarter is blind, the other three milk fine. So the bands are there to let our milkers and us know, hey, you don't milk this one. So the green bands signify a front quarter, and they go on the respective back leg. So that girl that we just saw was a right front, so she had a green band on her right leg. If it's a back quarter, it's a yellow band. All right. You want me to carry your laptop over?
Yeah, that would be great.
And then I didn't mention, so I said there was also orange bands. There's another group of cows, and as we're walking out, you guys will get a look at them. They're straight out from the barn. They're out there eating right now. That's what's called our pot herd or a hospital herd. Some of those girls in there have orange leg bands. So the orange leg bands mean do not milk. So we cannot milk those cows. And I forgot to show you guys the bulk tank. We do not milk those cows into the bulk tank for human milk. The reason for that is some of those girls are brand new mothers, and the first milk cannot be consumed by humans for quality reasons usually. Set this here.
That's great. That's fine.
Some of them might have had a case of mastitis, or maybe a respiratory infection, or some other illness that needed to be treated. And so we can treat them with approved antibiotics, just like when you guys get sick and need to go to the doctor. I'm actually a veterinarian, so I do all of our treatments here on the farm. So if one of our cows is sick, I give her a physical examination, just like when you guys go to your doctor, and then I determine what's wrong with her. Obviously, she can't tell me, so I've got to use a lot of senses and different testing to identify that. But once I determine what's wrong with her, then I can decide whether there's something that we have available to us as farmers that I can use. So there's only certain drugs that are available for both meat and milk production, and I have to abide by the rules and regulations of those drugs. So for instance, if I have a cow that has mastitis, I have some antibiotics that I know will work well, depending on the type of mastitis she has. I can give her that medication, but there is a time that she has to stay over in that hospital herd or in that pot herd, and she has to wear those leg bands because there's a withholding time on all those antibiotics, and that tells us that she cannot be milked or she cannot be sold for meat for certain amounts of hours or days, depending on the drug. And so we signify those girls that have been treated, and they're kept separate and their milk lasts. So we'll switch the pipes when we're milking, and that milk will all go down the drain. A lot of people assume that organic milk is better because it doesn't have antibiotics. The truth be told, all milk is the same. None of our milk has antibiotics in it. So those girls will stay out there until after the antibiotics have fully cleared their system by either the number of hours or days that is determined on the box by FDA. And then after that time, then she's free to rejoin the milking herd. So that's something that's very, very stringent and very regulated, and something that is very, very important to farmers. Okay, so this is our feed barn. So our girls have access to what's called a total mixed ration, or a TMR, which is what they're eating now. And then they also have access to grazing paddocks. So I don't know if you guys can see it well, but all out behind the barns are pasture, and it's divided into very small segments. So our pasture size right now is subdivided into roughly, I think the smallest is about a 2 or 3 acre segment up to about 5 acres. And we can change the size of the paddocks depending on how much grass we have available. So right now we're on the back end of our winter grazing, and then we will soon switch over to kind of our summer grasses. So our girls have access all day long, aside from when they're in the parlor, to the grass pastures for grazing. But then they also have a full balanced diet here in the barn. So cows actually have nutritionists. I actually think cows are pretty spoiled, and they've got a better life than us, because my goodness, they have a veterinarian on call all the time. They have nutritionists formulating their ration. They have lactational consultants that they're calling back in, but they have nutritionists that formulate this ration. So we get all of our feed from a place in South Georgia, and their nutritionist there formulates everything for us. And this ration is called a total mixed ration because it has everything they need for their maintenance. So for them to be big, shiny, pretty, healthy, body conditioned cows, plus be able to produce enough milk for all of you guys to drink. So within this ration, and the reason we mix it all together, my husband always likes to say that cows are kind of like kids, and they go for the sweets first. So if you were to put out this feed in different stacks, everything separate, they're going to eat the energy dense grain before they touch anything else. And they can actually make themselves sick if they eat too much of it. So we want to mix it all together so that when they have their first bite, it's just the same as their last bite. So within this feed, we have a lot of different things. You guys can see this stuff. This is a hay. It's actually a haylage. So it's, I kind of like to call it a pickled hay. It's wrapped and preserved, and we can feed it all year. And that's kind of chopped up into smaller segments within this feed. There's a, oh, and I wish I'd bought my bucket with everything separate. There's brewer's grain. So I talked earlier about how cows do a really good job of upcycling. So they can take things that we can't eat and would be put into, say, a landfill. But we can feed it to them because it's a very good energy dense feed for cows. So one of those is brewer's grains. So within the beer brewing industry, their byproduct would be thrown away, but instead it's delivered here and fed to our cows. This is another one example of an upcycled product. Forgot I still have my gloves on. You guys see what that is? So you guys utilize this. What else comes around this every day? So all of you guys probably have on clothes right now, I hope. This is a cotton seed. So within the bowl of cotton, there are these little seeds, and they are removed. Obviously your shirts don't have seeds in them, and so they can press this seed for oil, and they use that sometimes, but a lot of it isn't needed for that and would be for utilized or put into a landfill. So this also is another great feed stuff for cows. Cottonseed's very high in energy and fats, and makes a perfect feed stuff for cattle. There's another really good one for Florida, and I don't see it in here right now. There's I'm not even sure. I think that might be gluten, but it looks like this. So we have pellets within the feed that are kind of similar to this, maybe just a little bit fatter and a little bit darker, but it's citrus pulp. So you guys might drink orange juice. Obviously your orange juice doesn't have peel and seeds in it. But those peel and seeds, instead of going into a landfill, they get compressed into a pellet and fed to cattle. So yet again, another really great feed stuff for cows. There's also some perennial peanut in here, which we buy from a local farmer. And the balance of this is what we call our concentrate balancer. And so our nutritionist takes each of our feed ingredients that we talked about and puts them into a computer program, and then formulates, okay, what else do these cows need that they're not getting from those other ingredients? And he makes a balancer ration for us, or a balancer concentrate. That's gonna have any of the energy or protein or fats that maybe are missing from the rest of this, plus any vitamins or minerals that they need to stay healthy. There you go, girls. So you guys can see all the way down. Oh, there's one of our calves. So I said we don't have calves right now. We have 2 bulls that we're raising, and we're actually letting them stay on their moms. We normally raise calves separate from the cows. Yeah, we can walk down there. He's not gonna let us get close to them. And we have a little calf nursery area up at the front of our property. But this guy, he's covered in feed. He's being raised on his mom right now. We're actually looking at potentially raising our fall calving season on their mamas. It's going to take a little bit of change in kind of our facilities in order to raise the babies, because these little boogers can be wild. Any of you that are around beef cattle know that beef cattle are a little bit wilder than dairy cows. And so calves that are left on their moms can be downright crazy. So my husband and I are going to put in a set of kind of working pens and a little separate area so that we can handle the calves even when they're being raised on moms. We're going to see how it goes. It might be a total disaster. It's going to be our first big trial this fall. But you guys can see they have access. We will have to come back. Y'all can see they're going to eat away to the part that they can reach, and we'll come back and you can use a tractor, but we manually just push up the feed. It's a good workout for us. We'll talk a little bit about, I know we're getting close on time. One more thing though I want to talk about is waste management. So you guys see these cows, they eat a lot. So a cow can eat, and Jerseys eat a little less than the taller Holsteins, but they can easily eat 60 to 100 pounds a day per cow. So a huge amount of feed, and thus they have a huge amount of waste. And one thing that's very important for us with so many animals is to handle that waste in the best way we can. So this barn is set up so that they're on concrete right now while they're eating, and that helps with land erosion. Obviously, if you have a bunch of really big cows in one spot, they're going to make a mud hole very quickly. So the concrete barn helps prevent that. And it also allows for us a way to capture the manure in a mindful way, and then be able to utilize it for our fields. So at the front of the barn, we'll turn back this way, there's a big red, kind of very dirty looking tank up there. That's a big water tank. So that tank gets filled while the cows are being milked. And then at the end of milking, once the cows are pretty much done eating and they're all out on grass, we'll flush the barn with that big tank, and it'll flush the water down. You guys can't really see it right now, but there's a kind of a concrete runway that runs to a small wastewater management facility. So we have a separator that separates the solids from the liquids. The solids stay in one section, the liquids go over to a liquid lagoon. We then take the liquid portion and we utilize that giant, the giant sprinkler out there. So that's a center pivot. Most of you guys probably know what that is. We actually recycle all of the water that's used on this farm, and then all of the manure that hits the concrete, either in this barn or in our parlor, and it's recycled and then sprayed out on our fields for fertilizer. So we don't have to purchase any added fertilizer to go on the land. And then any of the solid portion of the manure gets put into a manure spreader and spread on fields that our center pivot doesn't reach. So there is a full cycle here. Any of the feed that comes in here obviously also gets recycled. It is utilized by the cow to produce milk, and then she excretes whatever she can't utilize for herself. And then it is flushed and recycled and spread back on the grass. So there's a full cycle, life cycle here for pretty much every aspect. My husband's headed back here now. If you guys want to, well, say he's gonna, I think he might put out feed. He might give us a little demonstration. And he's actually going to use the tractor and give them some more feed on top of the feed that's already been placed. Unless he's got something wrong with the tractor. All right, trying to think of anything I might have missed while we're waiting. I think I hit most. Oh, one thing for you guys, obviously know it's Florida. It gets really hot. Today is a nice day, so we don't have the fans on right now, but within the barn, we have both fans and misters. There's a, and it's actually on up at the front. It's really hard to see. There's a big T-shaped PVC pipe. That's a mister system, and there's some in front of the center fans. There's one spraying right out in front of us there. So when it's warm out, the cows obviously like to stay cool. So that's a way for us to provide cooling in the barn. And then out under our center pivot, we have misters as well. So while they're out grazing, we can turn misters on, and they can go in and out of the misters as they please while they're out on grass. Oh, Brad brought the ingredients. Perfect. So I already talked through everything, but you you tell them a little bit more about the different ingredients that we use, Brad.
Okay, the base of our ration that we have, which is what you see out here in the feed line, is already mixed together, is a locally grown ryegrass baleage. So this is harvested, this is being fed from last year. We just had some harvested at the beginning of April, and it is put into long tubes and it is ensiled. So it's pretty wet. It's about 60% moisture. Then we also use some perennial peanut hay that we purchase. And then we're also utilizing wet brewer's grains, which comes from Albany, Georgia, from the Miller Coors plant in making beer. So this is what is left when you make beer. So there's hops and barley and wheat in here, and it is really wet. This is only about 20% dry matter. It's about 80% water, liquid portion. And then we have some corn gluten. So corn gluten is used to make high fructose corn syrup. So when they take corn and they process it to get out the corn syrup, this is what is left. So this is pretty high in protein as well. And in those ingredients, we sample our forages, we send those off, figure out what the nutrient balance is on them. And we have a nutritionist who makes our feed for us, and he creates this concentrate blend. So this...
Oh, there's some citrus pulp. I told him
Nope, there is no citrus pulp in here right now.
That's all
gluten.
gluten.
So this varies a little bit from load to load to make it as cheap as possible, but this helps meet the cow's needs. So there's vitamins, minerals that might be lacking, a lot of energy. It has a lot of co-products or byproducts in it, like the gluten, the brew, the cottonseed, peanut hulls, soybean meal, cottonseed meal, ground corn. That's generally the makeup of this, but like I said, it changes a little bit from load to load. So all of these ingredients are mixed together in a certain ratio, and then we end up with what we have in the feed line.
Very good. We just talked about, I didn't have them all separated out, and I couldn't find any citrus pulp. I wasn't sure if it was in there. No, citrus pulp isn't in right now. It's not pricing in good. Are you going to put out a load right now?
Yes.
Okay. Well, we'll move out that way so we can start to take questions, and then we can kind of watch while he's putting out feed, if that works for you.
So if you have questions, give me just a moment to get to my computer. And when you have a question, you can just unmute your microphone, and then you can ask your question. And I think we have everything set up where we can hear. I think we may have just lost part of my phone.
Oh no. I'll come out so we can get a shot going back.
Do we still have anything going on the screen there? Okay. I may have just lost everybody. Yeah, the phone is apparently getting hot. Alright. Give it just a minute. I think we lost the... Alright, here we go. Got it back. Okay. Got it back. Alright, so my phone is starting to get hot. Alright, so my phone is starting to get hot, so we're not going to be here much longer, I don't think. So if you have a question, this is your opportunity to ask quickly, because we are getting a little bit. All right, so you have a question, you can unmute and ask your question. All right, so, all right. Yeah, I lost my connection again. The ways of technology.
Oh gosh. That's nice.
Okay, so if you have a question, unmute and ask now if you can. We'll try it. I keep shutting off, so try it and we'll see what happens. You can see
he's backing up first, and he'll put out the feed this way.
Backs through. The reason why he doesn't pull through is because of the end of the barn. There's a fence.
Yeah, and he could do a circle down there, but it gets it all muddy, so he just backs up. It works on his backing skills.
So he's backing through and shooting feed out.
Yeah,
when he comes back this way, he'll open up the feeder.
Yep, and it's just got an arm that a hydraulic arm that lowers down. So the feeder is kind of like a giant blender, guys. It's got two big screws with knives on the inside, so it's just like one of your blenders at home if you were making a smoothie. And it chops up, and we load all the ingredients in with a big bucket on a tractor into the mixer wagon, which is the big thing at the back, or the big blender. And then it chops up all of the ingredients and mixes them together, just like you guys saw when we were up on the feed lane. And then we'll deliver it out. And we feed once a day, kind of split into a few loads in the morning and then push up throughout the day, so the cows have access all day long. So he's getting ready, he's gonna lower the arm on the side. There it goes. And then he'll turn on the PTO, and then that drives both the arm and then also the blender on the inside, and then the feed will start coming out.
Okay, guys, I know we keep losing our feed. I'm sorry. Technology's grand. Mental note. You'll be able to go back and catch the whole video when I post it on YouTube. I keep the video up, so you'll be able to see all and hear all of this to answer your questions on the worksheet that I send out today. So,
and if they have questions that they didn't get answered or they couldn't get in, then you can send them to me, and I'll be happy to answer them later.
All right, so if you have something that you're really not sure about or want to know more about, you are welcome to send that to me on email or Remind, and I'll get those to Miss Austin, and she will answer them for you, and I'll post them. Okay, so nobody seems to be trying to ask questions right now, or if you are trying and I just can't hear you or get it to work, because, yeah. Technology is great. Okay, so you can see the feed shooting off the side. So we'll go ahead and end our meeting.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Miss Austin.
Yes, thank y'all. And
thank you for coming and allowing us to come to your farm and coming out and making
absolutely
your busy day and showing us how the dairy industry works.
Yes, absolutely. Anytime. And we generally, I don't know if this year we will, but generally in the fall we have a big open house on a Saturday in October. So you guys look for it. We've got a Facebook and Instagram page on the creamery and the farm, so we'll post it there. So y'all come join us again.
All right, so thanks again.
Thank you.